This
everyone thought
conference will
millennials
now be recorded.
were partying on the beach. It says we and our anxiety issues are holed up working from home, watching Hulu and yelling at our parents not to go outside. And I think part of me is, well, I mean, one, I am a millennial, and two, I think the reality is we try to put on millennial, like like essentially compare millennials with Gen Z or iGen, which are the teens that you're ministering to. So, but everyone seems to kind of put them together, but they're not the same people. So there's a lot of really stark differences. Just some basic things. For example, iGen. The reason there's a book called by Twinge named iGen. It's a great book. And this talk is based off of it somewhat, so I highly recommend you checking it out. But and I got to figure out how to make this go away. And nope, sorry, I don't know how to make this stop sharing. Oh, here we go. All right. And anyway, so in the book it talks about so for us, for me as a millennial, I didn't grow up with cell phones. I didn't get a cell phone until I think my junior year of high school. Is when I got my first cell phone, and it was a flip phone. Okay, so iGen have been born into smartphones. That's been their lived reality essentially their entire lives. And so the way that they think, the way they process things, the issues that they're dealing with are actually very different. When I was a kid, we had dial-up. And I still remember the terrible sound of dial-up and what that was like, and how to the pain of AOL online and AIM and all these different things. And this is not the same thing that kids are using today. So with that, I just want to help you realize that number one is they're not the same, and then two, that their lived reality is very different, honestly, than our own. And so trying to realize that is something that we really need to do. So the first thing I want to talk about is that they're growing up really slowly. So for myself, one of the big things, about, being in high school, especially, was, being able to drive. I got a hardship license, so I was able to drive at 14 years old. Dating, having girlfriends, doing these different things, going to work, doing those types of stuff. And as well as risky behaviors that are often common in high school, as like alcohol, drugs, and sex and stuff like that. So these are very kind of common things, but these milestones for high schoolers today for iGen are actually happening a lot more slowly. Often these things, like driving especially, as a youth minister in Corpus Christi, very few of the teens that I worked with actually got their license before they finished high school. There's so many kids that would wait until they were 18 or whatever before they got their license. Few and fewer kids are dating. The amount of kids that I had in youth group and stuff like that that actually didn't have relationships was actually quite a bit. Many of them don't work, and even things that I think a lot of people kind of assume that teens today are actually doing drugs and sex and alcohol and all these different things. It's actually not happening nearly as frequently. All the numbers are down for the entire country. Corpus Christi being a little bit of an oddball. Corpus Christi in particular actually has a little bit of a higher teen pregnancy rate than most other places. But for the most part, but even that number I think is still down compared to what it used to be. And so just realizing that they're growing up slower than you and I did. And part of that also means their maturity. They're not as mature as teens, as you and I probably, hopefully, were when we were kids. They're much more attached to their parents. They do almost everything with their parents. And that's just kind of what they're doing now. And so often I think for us, it's hard to imagine that because all the things that, for us in high school that were so important and so life-changing. And, for me, getting a car was one of the most important things of high school for me. Being able to drive, having that freedom, having that ability to go and do what I wanted to do was really important. But for teens today, that's not the same case. It's not the same reality. So realizing that those two things are very different. So they're growing up much slower than you and I might have. The next thing is, and maybe so this is from a book called Soul Searching. If you get a chance, there's a documentary called Soul Searching. And so it's a little bit dated now, but it's still really, really incredible. Essentially what it does in this book, or in this, documentary, they follow a number of teens around for an extended period of time and just kind of see what their faith journey is and what that looks like. And so there's, you know, a Protestant kid, there's a Catholic kid, there's a Jewish kid, there's a Muslim kid, and I think like an atheist, and they just kind of like, you know, talk about faith with them over an extended period of time and just kind of see where they're at. But also in soul searching, they did this massive study. And so to do studies for teenagers is actually very, very difficult because you have to have parental consent. But the kind of cool thing about that is when they were doing these studies, they're actually able to find out a lot of information about the family as well as the teen. And one of the number one things that they found was essentially that they believe in this thing called moral therapeutic deism. And so, this is titled God, Religion, Whatever. And that's kind of their view on God and religion. Oh, it's just kind of whatever. If you want to believe it, that's fine. But if you don't, that's okay too. So when I was in high school, one of the things that they would do for us every time we would come back from a big retreat or a conference or anything like that, they would sit us down before we got home and they would say, all right, listen, guys, when you go home, everyone's going to be, just, really against you having faith. They're going to try to, be against you and they're not going to want to have anything to do with you, all these different things. And that is not the reality today. If a kid gets excited about Jesus, it gets excited about, boxing, about, anime, about whatever, that's kind of the other teens' kind of reaction to it. It's like, oh, yeah, that's fine, I guess, whatever. It's not, there's not really something against it, but there's not really anything for it either. So it's just kind of more of an apathy towards religion and towards faith and towards really anything like, so it would be, so essentially if you're doing any of those things, I think the term is called being a tryhard. Just being someone that's trying to go 100% for things. And so maybe you get made fun of for being a tryhard, but that's really about it. So what is moral therapeutic deism? Essentially, it's just kind of this God that kind of watches over from on high, and he created the world, but he doesn't really have much to do with it. He wants us to be good people, nice people. I have an aversion to the word nice because in Texas anyway, like, oh, she's nice, honey. There's this kind of mentality. If you say something, you're like, oh, but be nice to her. It's actually not being nice. It's actually essentially just faking it. So I have an issue with that, but neither here nor there. But essentially, it's like, but that niceness or that goodness is essentially the same niceness or goodness that is taught by any, like, just being a decent human being. It has nothing to do really with religion or with God. Thirdly, essentially, the goal of life is just to be happy and to feel good about oneself. And so essentially that feeling good means that if I feel good about it, right, then it's okay to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be in line with a morality concept or with, religious teachings or anything like that. Just if I feel good about it, it's really not a bad thing to be a part of. The fourth thing is God is in this reality. God's not really a part of it. Like he's there if I need him, but he's not really super active in our lives. He's more, again, he's this kind of cosmic therapist, and so he's there when I need him. So if something bad happens, I might pray and I might ask God, hey, will you fix this issue for me? But really, once that issue's fixed or I've moved on or whatever, I kind of put God on a shelf and I walk away. There's no real relationship. There's no ongoing thing. It's just he's there for me to take off the shelf when I need it, and then I put it back. And then finally is, good people go to heaven when they die. And so, listen, if you're just a good person, that you can go to heaven. You don't really have to have believe in Jesus. You don't have to do anything like that. But if you're good, God is loving, and therefore you go to heaven. So that's essentially moral therapeutic deism. But the thing is that reality is not the same as what you and I believe about God. And I love this quote from Soul Searching, and it says, Christianity is either degenerating into a pathetic version of itself, or more significantly, Christianity is actively being colonized and displaced by a quite different religious faith. There's a massive disconnect between what we're teaching in CCD and youth ministry and what's actually being absorbed. What's actually being taken up and lived out. essentially, like, it's kind of like they're hearing one thing about Christianity, they're hearing what they want to believe, what they want to see, what they want to adhere to, and kind of throwing out the rest. Like, in the past, it's maybe been called, cafeteria Catholics or something like that. This reality is like, I just kind of accept the things that I like, and just kind of dispel the things that I don't agree with, and I'm not okay with. And teens today, that's really kind of where they're at for the most part. They don't just believe it because the church says to believe it. It has to be more than that for them to do it. And this other thing is from also soul searching from the book, is that God is just kind of this divine butler and cosmic therapist. So he's there to kind of clean up the mess and take care of problems, to listen to me when I need it. And then he goes away. He, like the butler, listen, I don't really want the butler in my life. I don't want to live with the butler. I don't want to have a relationship with the butler. The therapist, kind of the same thing. Like, listen, once I'm done, I leave therapy. I don't need it anymore. There's just kind of a massive need for us as adults, especially, to help teens see that Christ is a living, that he is like living. He's alive, and we can have an actual relationship with him. And so part of that is, and the biggest, maybe, and hopefully not, but potentially you see some of these things even in yourself, is we can have a personal relationship with Jesus, and we ought to, and especially for being a small group leader, or or whatever, like, you need to have this relationship with Jesus and be able so that you can lead other people into that same relationship. You can't leave, like, I couldn't tell someone, like, the things about my wife, that really impact me and have changed me, if I didn't actually have a relationship with her. I would just be making it up. And so, like, it's like, listen, like, God is so great, he's so amazing, but if you don't have the relationship first, you can't actually give that to somebody else. So the other thing, and so coming from, obviously they're able to do a lot of research about not just the kids, but also their parents. And the honest reality is, essentially, is they've been raised without religion. And maybe they go to church, but religion's not really that important. But the reality is we know, is that, like, the religiosity of parents is very significant on how teens believe and what they're going to believe. Most teens are going to believe what their parents believe. And in this book, there's an entire chapter devoted to Catholicism. And then Christian Smith, the author of this book, later wrote another book that's just about Catholics. And the unfortunate reality is Catholic families believe less, unfortunately. And so they, and there's a lot of reasons for that, poor CCD, poor formation, that these words like, like, you have a personal relationship with Jesus, all these different things have not really been brought up for very much for most Catholics. And so this is something that is foreign to a lot of kids. And so when we're asked these questions and stuff like that, it's actually something it's rather difficult for kids to answer. But, like, there's a lot less Catholics who have, percentage-wise, who have faith compared to our Protestant brothers and sisters. And so, like, and a lot of that, and so what it says in the book, and it's very true, is a big portion of that is we haven't, as Catholic parishes, we have not invested as much as other churches have into young people. And I'm not saying that, maybe you're from a parish that is investing quite a bit, but, like, overall across the board in the entire United States, compared to other churches, other denominations, they've invested massive amounts into, like, developing these relational ministries and doing things with young people and helping them, and they have all of this, money and all this different stuff set aside to do this, and essentially we've gotten out of it what we've put in. And we haven't put in, unfortunately, we haven't put in nearly as much. Youth ministry in the Catholic world is actually relatively new. So the model for, like, Catholic ministry for young people was essentially Catholic schools. And so that's essentially what it's been for, a very long time. And not that Catholic schools are bad, but obviously the majority of kids today are not going to Catholic schools. And so if that is the only model that we have to raise young people in the faith, we're going to miss a lot of kids, and that's unfortunately what's happening in a lot of places. So there's that. So the other thing is there's been a massive surge in nuns, and I don't mean NUNSs, like religious sisters. I mean NONESs, or non-affiliated. So if you were to ask someone, what is your religion? What do you believe? And they would say, well, nothing. I don't affiliate with a particular religious group. I have no religious affiliation, or as commonly known in this ministry world is nuns and ONESs. And so the crazy thing is, in the U.S., maybe one of the largest growing demographics is ex-Catholics. We have a very large growing number of people who are ex-Catholics, and in Corpus Christi, it's super obvious. Essentially, with a large Hispanic population, with so many people, like the majority of these people have been at least baptized in the Catholic faith, but now do not affiliate with the Catholic Church. Sometimes they will go to a Protestant church, sometimes they'll go to something else, but often they are not going to another church at all. So there's that. And on to the more fun stuff. So young people today really feel alone. So I went to this conference about a year ago, and there was a speaker who was just really impactful. He's a sociologist, and in particular, he studies young people. And he studies, kind of what their lived reality is, what's going on in their lives, what are their issues, what are their problems. And so he wanted to do this study where he reached out and just kind of to ask the question of, like, how many interactions do you have per day with, significant interaction do you have per day with other people? And so he was, doing this with, he teaches in a university, and he was, talking to his students in the class, and he's like, okay, so like, all right, so maybe we'll do like 10 or more interactions per day, 7 to 10 interactions per day, 6 to, or maybe 4 to 6 interactions per day, and then 1 to 4. And all the students in his class said, you have to put 0. You have to put 0 as an option, because there's a lot of people that have 0 meaningful interactions every single day. And that's the teens that we're working with. Many of them, even though they're so well connected, even though they're born with an iPhone in their hands practically, they're all on social media, they're all doing these different things, but they sometimes have no meaningful interactions every single day. That's powerful. We as humans are social creatures. We need relationship. We need these things to help us to grow in relationship with other people, to know other people, and to feel comfortable in our own skin. And without that, that's very damaging to us. And so essentially, like, but 66% of this of Gen Z have fewer than 3 meaningful interactions per day. That is a staggering number. That many people don't have a meaningful interaction, more than maybe like the, hey, how are you doing? Right? And then you kind of give the canned response. Oh, I'm doing great. Right? That's not a meaningful interaction. That's just kind of a, like we have the programmed response, right? So the other, and so that's not supposed to say 0. I apologize for that. I believe it's around 70% are anxious and depressed. 70% of iGen say that their mental health is a serious issue for them. They feel anxious and stressed because of college, because of school, because of sports, because they're overwhelmed, because of homework, because of family pressure, because of all the expectations they have, because they spend too much time online. You name it, it's there. They have anxiety about the way that they look online, the way they're perceived online. You often find teens that have multiple social media accounts. They'll have kind of this show, they'll have this, Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat profile, and this is for this group of people to see. And then they're going to have another one over here, and that's for a different group of people to see. So like some people will see kind of the nice things, the good things about me that I'm okay with putting out to the world, and then other people are going to see kind of the darker side of me and the things that are wrong with me and the things that are going. So it's like they're kind of they're even afraid to share their full selves even online, which is something they're very comfortable with, but they're even afraid to share themselves fully there. They have to kind of fragment it and kind of have these different groups of people that they're willing to share things with. And secondly is just the massive amount of young people today who report feeling depressed. Like I'm not sure if you've 13 Reasons Why was kind of a big deal, and still is. But initially when it first came out, there's a lot of issues with it, mainly because it seemed like it glorified suicide. And so they ended up, like, if you watched it or something like that, at the beginning, it didn't actually have kind of like a suicide hotline or anything like that associated with it. Now it does, because I think there's a lot of young people who really struggle. And it's somewhat natural because of hormones and all these different things, to struggle with feelings of depression and suicide and things like that. But most of the time, they're more fleeting. But young people today are expressing that they're feeling more depressed and things like that for longer periods of time, getting closer maybe to clinical depression. Lastly, bullying doesn't stop. When I was a kid, like if I got bullied and stuff because I was poor, because I had holes in my jeans, because I didn't look, I'm 6'9" and as thin as a toothpick, and whatever. And so I got made fun of and stuff like that. But like when I got home, that stopped. There wasn't a way to keep bullying me once I got home. You could call my landline, I guess, but that wasn't super common. You could call the party line or something like that. Hopefully you all know what that is, probably. And so you call the party line, I guess, and then you could talk, talk trash about someone that way. But it wasn't as common that it just doesn't stop. So cyberbullying is still pretty widespread. You could continue to be bullied, well, like both during class, even if you're not in class with the person, you can be bullied, well after class, because they can, or after school, into the night, because they can bully you online, make fun of you, and those things like that. And girls in particular are a lot more vulnerable to this, and a lot more likely to be bullied online just in general. So just lastly, I'm just going to wrap it up before we maybe kind of give some practical tips on what this means, and how do we go, where do we go from here, type of thing. So what can we do? The first thing that I would say is to help them develop real meaningful community. And obviously that's what small groups, that's the whole goal of small groups, is to help them develop real meaningful community, and just help them have honest relationships with people where they can feel that they can be vulnerable and talk about real issues, real problems, and real struggles. And that does mean sometimes that we're not going to focus on catechesis at that moment. We're going to focus on just hearing the person, because that's what needs to be heard. Secondly is, to actually speak honestly and openly yourself about what you believe and why you believe it. Like I said earlier, they need to be led there, and they need to see it happen. And so, like we've talked about prayer and how the importance of that. And we've talked about all these different topics, and we're going to talk about more. Like later, John Kleiman's going to give a talk, I believe. I don't think it's happened yet. I'm pretty sure it hasn't. So he's going to give a talk on how to share the gospel with kids. And I think that's something that you, like, honestly, within that's one of the most important things that you can do, is share the gospel in the context of your own testimony, your own story, and why you believe, and why you believe that the God of the universe, who created heaven and earth, like has had a plan from the beginning of creation for our salvation, and the plan was culminated in the person of Jesus Christ, who lived and performed miracles. He was a real person on earth, and then he was beaten terribly. He was crucified, he died, he was buried, and he rose again on the third day. And then you and I are called to follow him, right? So like learning how to tell that story within the context of your testimony is really important, in helping these kids realize who Jesus is, and what he can mean to their life. And lastly is just be the adult in a young person's life that matters. Be the adult that they can go to. There's teens today that call me, that were in my youth group like 8 or 9 years ago. They reach out, they're like, hey, Zach, I'm going through this. Can you pray for me? Or they'll reach out just to talk, or whatever, let me know what's going on in their life. All kinds of things. And I think that's one of the things that, like, we have to be that person, because sometimes they don't have that at home. They don't, and they often sometimes don't necessarily feel like they have it anywhere. And so being that one person that cares enough just to hear them, to listen to them, to love them with who they are, and listen, like some of these, like there's one guy in particular who's a great guy. He's in the military. He's doing those different things, but like, he called, he told me to call him one morning. And so I called him, and it was like the it was like 2 days after his birthday, and I called him, he answers the phone, and he's hungover. And he's like, hey, I'm hungover, will you call me back later? And I did, and we talked and stuff like that. But like, he knows no matter what, I love him. He also knows I'm going to tell him, like, hey, stop drinking so much, go to mass, do these types of things. But we have the relationship first, and then after the relationship, I can talk to him about all kinds of different things, and that's why we do what we do. All right, so with that, I've extended my 30 minutes, and I will close. So, Bob. Oh, all right. So let me turn this off real quick. I have a hard time doing this for some reason. Perfect. Okay. All right. So practical tips with this. I mean, so like, there's a lot of things that I could talk about as far as practical tips. But I guess the whole goal is just to really more talk to you about who iGen is, as opposed to like necessarily giving a whole lot of I mean, I think part of it, like the practical tips I would say to do is watch shows that they're watching. Okay, even if you don't necessarily like them. Okay. Watching 13 Reasons Why was not like my first thing, like, oh, you know what I'm going to do tonight? I'm going to binge 13 Reasons Why. No, I didn't really have a desire to watch it. It is an interesting story. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. It's not a bad. Well, I mean, there's good and bad to it, I guess is what I would say. But it's important for us to actually know what's going on in their lives. Listen, like, be familiar with some of pop culture. You don't have to be the hippest, most like coolest person in the world. Okay, don't be something that you're not. But like, if they mention something, you should be able to maybe like be able to relate to that in some way. Listen to music that is outside of your comfort zone, and that way you can talk to them about like what's going on in their lives. Like doing things like that, I think are really important. And the other thing I would say, as far as just relating to young people today, is get into memes. Okay. Kids like memes. Okay, they really like memes or GIFs or GIFs or whatever you want to call them, because everyone has a different way that they pronounce it. But get into some of those things and realize that use that. I mean, kids, like if you see a funny TikTok video or something like that, and you're in a small group, like, hey, I saw this video. Did you see this? Check it out. And talk to them about it. It disengages them a little bit because they see that you're willing to kind of get into their world, and they don't see you as just kind of an old fogey that doesn't really listen to them. And so doing those types of things, like making sure that you're I'm not trying to say like be the hipster cool youth minister, youth volunteer, whatever. You don't have to do that whatsoever, but at least have an idea. Like maybe don't watch all of 13 Reasons Why, but watch an episode or two. So you're like, hey, yeah, I watched part of that. Very interesting story. Maybe don't get look at all the memes, but if you see a funny one when you're scrolling on Facebook or whatever you're doing with your day, you're like, hey, save it for later and then show it to the kids at small group. You see a funny video, like those types of things, like and it becomes kind of an interesting thing. So there's I'm not going to show it to you because it's ridiculous. There's this really strange video on YouTube that I would share with kids, and essentially it's just a so if you search up later "guy on a buffalo," there's a song that goes with it, and it's rather hilarious, and there's like 3 or 4 of them, and it became a thing at my youth group that we would watch like part of "Guy on a Buffalo." They would beg to watch this stupid video often. Because it was something like it was funny. It was something that they could relate to. I mean, and it's like it's from like a really old movie. And so there's this guy riding a buffalo, and but then there's this other guy that's like doing a voiceover singing to it and singing what he's doing. I don't know how to explain it. Just look it up. It's rather comical. But that would be something. It became part of our culture. And essentially what we're doing with small group is we are building culture. And so doing those types of things that hey, did you watch the new, Guy in a Buffalo, thing? Something that I found very funny here recently is the Worshikin. That's the Worship Chicken. Okay, if you haven't checked out the Worshikin, WORSHICKEN on YouTube, it's pretty awesome. If you know any worship songs, so they're doing a few songs that, and there's this like squeaky chicken, okay, and they make the squeaky chicken do the song. Okay, they do the entire song. It's rather funny as well. Again, I'm not saying you have to do all of the things, but like if you see something that's interesting, that's funny, maybe it's Christian related, maybe it's Catholic related, maybe it's whatever. So again, it's a tie-in. It's a tie-in to something that they enjoy as well as something that we're passionate about. And so trying to find a middle bridge, a gap, to connect us a little bit more in the middle. And the other thing is I would say be comfortable in saying, like, in learning from them. Ask them what acronyms mean. Ask them, what, like, I mean, be careful because some of them are, mean things that you don't want them to talk about necessarily with you. But let's ask them questions about like their lived reality. Don't be afraid to ask them questions because it's something that like it's what they live, and honestly, they want to talk about it. Like I want to talk about my childhood. I want to talk about the things that I did that I thought were cool and weren't. We want to do those things. So like, let them talk about themselves and hear them. Like I know Mary Maldonado, who did the first talk, one of the things that she started doing with her group is they would do like a one of the kids would do help them do a TikTok video at the beginning of every small group. And it was just like, it would be like, they would spend 1 minute on it, doing a TikTok video at the beginning of a small group, they can all share and talk about or whatever. And it was just a really small, simple thing that they did together. But the other side of that is also it helps to actually evangelize and let other people know what's going on as well. So get them involved, let them take a part of it, let them do some stuff like that. Bob's going to talk more about that as far as like student leadership and stuff like that, and the importance of that later, I believe. So yeah, cool. I think that's about all the tips I can give you about trying to enculturate yourself a little bit with iGen. Don't go too deep. Okay, you don't have to go too deep. I would recommend again watch Soul Searching. I think that's a really great resource. Again, there's also this book called Soul Searching. You could read that if you're more into books than you are into watching documentaries. It's very interesting. Like if you're into that kind of thing, which I am. And then Twinge iGen is also very good as far as like if you're looking for a resource to find out more information about young people and what their lived reality is. So that's what I got. Do we have any questions? Nope.
Questions or experiences too, right? Could be also input. Like we got a lot of youth ministers here. Any insights into the youth that you deal with? I think is also.
I mean, I think he was pretty spot on with everything because I'm a Gen Zer. I'm 22. So I mean, everything that you were saying, basically, like I relate to and like I understand and I have a few kids. I have 3 kids who they're 16, 17, and so I mean, I pretty much know them and know how they are and things they like to do and stuff like that. But I think that's like a really cool way, like learning a meme or a TikTok or whatever is a really cool way to like start a conversation with them or make them feel comfortable with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought those were really good tips, and yeah, definitely related to a lot of what you were talking about.
Still, that first that tweet on Twitter is probably like when I first read that, I was like, that is me. I remember like right before I saw it, I literally called my mom. I'm like, oh, so are you going to work? Like, are you staying home? What's going on? What are you doing? And everyone's like, oh, millennials, they're all partying at the beach. And I'm like, no, I got 4 kids and a job, and no.
Okay, we have a question here in Refugio.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So my, I'm sorry. So my question
Sorry.
is, so TikTok is a form of social media, and the only reason I'm asking this is because I'm an educator, and any time we put children on social media, you have to have permission from the parents. So as the church or as this group, is that something that they do beforehand? Make sure you have permission to do this. That's my only fear right there, because I know that's something very, that in the school district, that's very, I mean, there's been times that a kid's accidentally got into a picture, and so that, I guess my question is how do you handle that?
Yeah. So essentially, like what I was saying with like what I know that one group was doing. So that was a teen-led thing. It was something that the teen. So like the youth, the small group leader was not the one that was initiating it. It was actually the teen. So like I'm not saying to like necessarily like tell your teens, hey, do a TikTok of us. That was something that like they wanted to do, and that the youth volunteer participated in because they wanted her to be a part of it. And so it was more like they were asking her to be a part of what they were already going to do themselves. So it was just it was just a different reality. So like as far like I will say I don't know if this has happened yet. Before I left, I was told it was going to be out by this Friday, I believe. It's not out yet. Okay. Anyway, so with so the small group registration, or sorry, the liability form, and hopefully there's going to be a youth ministry handbook with some updated liability forms and waivers and stuff like that. And so essentially, like every kid will actually sign a photo release, and so that'll be a part of it. So like. And so I would say that it should be standard. If you don't have that, let me know, and we can help you set that up or something like that. Like I have the form I can send you, and stuff like that. And like I think it's important to just like I think it should just be part of your regular registration form, and then essentially everyone that you have in ministry has done it. And so that would be my recommendation, is just make sure that everyone has their registration form done and that you already had the photo release form from everyone. I've actually never had any. I've had one person in almost 10 years of ministry that said, I don't want my kid to be in any photos or videos. And there was a specific reason for that. But like it's only happened one time in my experience in ministry.
High school.
High school, just high school. Okay.
I can't. Were you asking me a question? I couldn't hear you.
Oh no, sorry.
I would like to talk on when you said speak honestly about the faith, what you believe, why you believe, and almost share your testimony. In our experience here with our youth group, that has been a real attention grabber. And a lot of the kids feel like we become more relatable rather than these adults who are preaching or telling them how they should be living, what they need to do the right thing. But when we share a personal story, they appreciate it more. But we've also had the instance where we had some adult chaperones and also catechists that their only approach was personal testimony 100%. And so we had a little bit of a problem, and we had to tell them, like, there's a line and you got to draw it. And you can't spend the entire time sharing your personal testimonies and things like that, because there are teachings and there are values that we do need to teach, and that we're called to teach, we're responsible to teach. So I love the personal testimony, and I think it's very powerful, especially with teens. But we just have to, in my experience, I had to be careful with that two particular adult helpers who, it was like once they saw the kids respond, they were like, this is the way to go 100%. And that's all it's ever going to be, is personal testimony. And, we'll just kind of throw curriculum to the side. So that was just one thing that we experienced, and I wanted to share.
Well, the thing I would say is what I think is important is I think you can actually essentially do a catechetical lesson with a testimony built into it. And so I think part of it is just teaching them how to do that. And so like if you're talking about a particular like catechesis, let's say it's the Eucharist, right? So we can do actual catechesis, actual teaching on the real presence in the Eucharist, and then also tell a testimony of what it why I believe this is why I believe in the Eucharist, and so it can be a little bit of both, as opposed to just like where it's just only one. And I think it's really important to be able to merge those two together, because then it actually makes it more relatable, more believable, because it's not just like, hey, this is what the Catechism teaches. This is what this has been my personal experience from it as well. And so like I'm a big fan of, as much as you possibly can, don't let catechesis just be this dry thing. Like this is our lived faith. Now there's some topics and stuff like that that maybe we don't have experience with, but as much as humanly possible, I think we need to try to like integrate our own lives and our own stories into our teaching, into our catechesis, to make it this is a lived faith. It's not just a thought process. Yeah. No one else have any questions? Get in early tonight.
We have one more question here.
Go for it.
It's just the point. I teach First Communion kids, and you'll be amazed once we start talking about bullying. We can spend the whole hour talking about it, and these are, second graders. So I just want to iterate how important it is to listen to them, and if that's already happening in the second grade, you can imagine how bad it is by the time junior high and high school. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I mean, it's become a very, very big deal. Hi, Bea.
Hi, okay, now I got it. Now also something that we have observed in the youth group, it's not like we don't do catechesis, it's on Sunday youth group. Experiential stuff has been like really important for them, and they loved it. I'm talking about trips that we have taken or service experiences. It came very strongly in their surveys, assessment at the end of the year, how meaningful those experiences were for them. So I guess the hands-on experience also, I guess they are very receptive and they grow a lot through those experiences.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, just like we talked about, like just like we were talking about with Justine too, Bea, like I mean, I think the reality too is there is an opportunity to actually integrate catechesis into those experiential things as well. So when I take kids on a retreat, when I take them on a trip, I tell them like this is why we do this. And then like at the end of it, like we went to I took kids to a nursing home right down the street from St. Philip the Apostle a number of years ago. It was an incredible experience for a lot of our kids. But afterwards, I'm a big fan of just kind of what I would call like a decompression, and just talking about what happened and stuff like that. But in that moment, it's an opportunity for us to talk about like this is why we do these things. These are the corporal works of mercy, and not it's not just something that we're just going to talk about. We're actually going out and doing it, and this is what it looks like to do it. And so I think there's opportunities to do again, we're not all head, we're not all heart. We're both and all the time. And so with everything that we do, we need to integrate like kind of the whole human person into what we're doing, as opposed to just trying to just do one side. Like if we only do one thing, like so if we only do this, that's the extreme. right? So if we only like, listen, we're just going to take kids and we're just going to do experiential things and no teaching, no catechesis, no anything. You know, so like we know that that's not the most effective thing to do. You know, if we just do just straight catechesis, well, that's what we've done for a long time, and we also know that that hasn't been super effective. You know, if we just do like if we just pick one side and only do that one thing, then we're not going to be nearly as effective as we ought to be. And so the goal with these small groups is, so like it is interesting. So we're starting hopefully more on the relational side, more on maybe the experiential side, more on on that component of it. But the goal is to build the relationship enough that you can talk about the reality and you can talk about the faith. You can ask the hard questions, that you can discuss the hard things and get real answers from them. The goal is not to stay in that spot. The goal is to continue to progress and go further and go deeper and help them to grow in faith. The process that I, you know, like when I was talking with the seminarians and stuff a few weeks ago, that I, you know, equate it with is the RCA process. And that's really what it is. At the beginning, there's a stage called the inquiry stage. And that stage can last for a super long time or a super short time, depending on the person. You know, maybe they already have a relationship with God. Maybe they, you know, have, you know, a really good relationship with you. Maybe they, like there's can be all different factors. And then the next stage is the catechetical, like is the catechetical stage. And so we want to get to the catechesis. That is the next step that we want to get to. But we start with a relationship. We start with listening to the person. We start to hearing their story. We start to hearing their questions, their problems, their issues. And then after we, you know, have listened, then we can start to catechize based on their needs, as opposed to like just doing a one-size-fits-all program. And so that's the goal with these small groups is like right now, if you're in the small group, is listen to what their problems are, listen to what their concerns are, listen to the things that they're saying. And then like if they don't believe in the Eucharist, they don't believe in the true presence, you know, they have massive issues with Mary, they like whatever it is. Okay, well, let's go there next, because that's a question that they have. That's an issue that they have. That's something they want to talk about. We want to go first where they're interested. Now, like we want to also obviously have an opportunity to do like you know, like catechesis on everything, but we realize that we have a person in front of us, and if we go where they're interested, that interest level only grows, as opposed to like, you know, like if you went to a class, maybe you can remember a class that you went to in high school or college or something like that you really didn't enjoy. Well, like if we make you go week in, week out, and you despise every bit of it, well, you're not going to learn very much. Whereas if I'm like, hey, like I take that same topic and I find one thing that you're interested in about it, and we learn about that. And then after you learn about that, then you're interested in another topic, and then we learn about that. And so slowly but surely we start to go through the different questions of the faith. We go through the different realities, the different, you know, issues and stuff like that, and we can eventually hit them all, on just realistically and honestly, because essentially like I can tell you the way that the questions kind of develop, but like just because they come naturally to young people and to us really. And you know, first we're going to, you know, essentially question the existence of God and big moral issues and all these different things, and then slowly and surely we'll get into the finer and the smaller and more detailed things about the faith. Yeah. Cool. You guys want to pray, and then we'll we can close the evening up. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So this is from Psalm 139, verses 1 through 16. The title of this is called The Inescapable God. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you knew it altogether. You beset me behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high, I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, let only darkness cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am wondrously made. Wonderful are your works. You know me right well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written every one of them. The day that they were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. Jesus, there's nowhere we can go that can take us away from you. You are truly the inescapable God. You formed us in our mother's womb. Help us and help the people that we minister to and catechize and develop relationships with know that you are this God that loves them inexplicably. That there's nowhere that we can go that is far from you. There's nothing that we can do that will take us away from you. That you are always there. Even if these young people we're ministering to feel like they're in darkness or despair, they're in the depths, if they feel like there's nothing there for them, Lord, that through us and through this ministry that we're doing for and with these young people, that they may encounter you in a profound way and desire to grow more closer to you. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the gift of all of these adults who have such a burning desire to serve the church today, to go on mission as you have instructed us to go therefore and make disciples of all nations. This is the reason that the church exists. And you've brought this group of people together today to do exactly what you have commanded. Lord, we ask you to bless us, to help us in the ministry that we've undertaken, and to be with us always. We ask for your grace in all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. See you all next week. And good luck with your, you haven't started work yet, have you, Zach?
No, Monday.
On Monday. All right. We'll be praying for you Monday.
Thank you.
All right. God bless everybody. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Night.
Good
Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.